After scaling past 25 million with a fully remote team, I've learned something most entrepreneurs miss. Your ability to hit 8 figures has nothing to do with marketing or sales. It comes down to how well you can attract and manage a world-class team. Here's the problem. Most founders are great at marketing. They can create content, run ads, and build funnels in their sleep. But when it comes to recruiting, managing, and developing top talents, it's a complete disaster. And I get it. Unlike marketing, where there's endless content and courses, there's almost zero practical and up-to-date information on building world-class teams. I had to learn through expensive trial and error, losing key employees, dealing with operational chaos, and watching profit margins shrink. But you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. Today, I'm sharing with you the 7 rules that we use to attract and maintain a top 1% team that runs our $25 million operation more efficiently than companies half our size. Rule number 1, you need to be conducting bi-weekly meetings with your direct reports. Direct reports is just a fancy way of saying people who report to you. So for example, if you're a CEO in a company, this could be your client success director, your head of sales, your marketing director, head of support or billing, etc., etc. This is an example of one of the bi-weekly meetings that I have. You'll notice that everything I do is very systemized, i.e. we have agendas for all of our meetings. You don't just want to hop on a call and just chat it up for 30 minutes and then get off, because you're not really moving towards something. Also, you're probably not going to take any notes and you can't recall that information in future meetings. So let me walk you through what our typical bi-weekly meeting looks like with my direct reports. So first of all, the first 5 minutes, there's a personal check-in. This is when I ask them 3 questions. How are you doing? Is there anything going on outside of work that's affecting you? And how's your work-life harmony? I'm very intentional with how I use work-life harmony because I believe the best workers and best CEOs are people that harmonize their work and their personal life, not people that keep them totally separate. So I get to learn a little bit about what's going on in their personal life. This could be that they're having a baby. This could be that they're trying to lose weight. This could be that they're trying to buy a house. And I can see if there's any way I can develop the goals of the company with their personal goals to get more buy-in from them. I write some notes down so I can recall them at future meetings. The next 5 minutes, we go through scorecard, rock, and to-do review. As I'll talk about in a moment here, everybody in my company has a number that they're responsible for. So the scorecard is us looking at the specific dashboard for this direct report. So for my client success director, it could be the number of ascensions or back-end cash that we're doing. For my sales director, it could be the net new cash that we've collected or our cash per close, et cetera, et cetera. Then we look at their rock, and the rock is just a fancy way of saying their goals for the quarter. So every single quarter, we set intentions on what we want every single person in our company to strive towards. And that's based off of the company top rock, which is typically going to be a cash number that we're trying to hit. And so this is a personal one-on-one opportunity for me to review where they're at in the progress of their rock. And I can ask them, is there any obstacles that you're facing that I can lend you additional resources for? Or is there anybody in your department or in somebody else's department that may be hindering your progress on this rock? And this is a little bit different than when we have larger meetings with maybe the leadership team or with the rest of the company, because they can maybe bring something up that's a little bit too sensitive to bring up in front of other people, and I can still address it before it becomes a big problem with us hitting our goals this quarter. And the final part of this section is the to-do review. And this is something that I added on recently because I'm a little bit of an efficiency freak. And I know that my job as a CEO is to make sure I'm doing the proper allocation of resources, which includes my employees' time. A lot of CEOs spend all their time optimizing their calendar and don't ever look at the people that they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to. So I take a second here to look at their calendar. I look at their Asana to-do boards, their Asana tasks. Are they doing anything they shouldn't be doing? Are they doing things that we can delegate to somebody else? The next section is going to be feedback. And this is really what the one-on-one is all about. In this feedback section, I ask 3 sets of questions. The first is, what do they think is going well in their department and what do they think could be going better? This is really critical, especially when you're dealing with a leadership team, because you want to make sure that they have the ability and the awareness to see what's going on at all levels of their department. So for example, if they think everything's going really great and I know for a fact that they're missing some areas here, then that could let me know that something is not in alignment. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad leader. It could just mean that they are literally so busy, they don't have any capacity, that they're not actually doing any managing their department. They're just doing. So I'll do that first set of questions to hear their feedback. Then I give them my feedback. So I let them know, what do I think has been going well in the department in the last few weeks, and what do I think could be doing better? And a lot of people ask me this question that are my clients, and people say, Ravi, how do you give feedback to your leadership team? And I don't like immediately give feedback all the time inside Slack where I don't think it's maybe the most effective use. What I'll do is if it's like a larger issue that I see happening, I'll actually put it inside of this Asana task here so that when our meeting comes up, I can reference that specific note at that specific time where it's a little bit more appropriate. As a CEO, it's a really great sign when both myself and the department leader have the exact same feedback on what's going well and what could be worked on. And then the final part of the feedback section is actually where I ask the leader, what is some feedback that you could give to me as the CEO? And I just shut up and I take the feedback. I don't argue with them. I don't correct them. And a lot of times what happens is, at least in the first few meetings I had with my leadership team about this, they would say, oh, everything's all great, everything's fine, because nobody wants to upset the founder or the CEO. And so I would just have to dig a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper, or even sometimes I would bring up instances that I felt like maybe I could have been a little bit better, and I would just ask them their feedback on that. The next section is going to be development. This one is pretty simple, but in essence, you're looking at number one, 6 months in the future, is this person happy with where their progress is going to be in the company, where their standing is in the organizational chart, their compensation structure, et cetera, et cetera. This allows you to avoid anybody leaving the company because they're upset. And then the second part of this is actually you seeing if there's any courses, coaching programs, or people that you can connect this person with in order to help them do their job better. A few examples of this is that we identified with my head of support and billing that he could use a little bit work on his leadership abilities. So we bought the full Patrick Lencioni book sets for him to be able to go and learn how to be a better leader there. Another example is with my executive assistant. We decided she could maybe do a little bit better training on my travel and making that a little bit of a smoother service for me. So we bought her a concierge program for him to go through that. And then the final part of this one-on-one is going to be the conclusion. This is just where you're going to recap any important parts that you talked about during this meeting. You're going to assign to-dos with due dates and assignees inside your project management software. And you're going to make sure anybody else that needs to know about any decisions that were made in this meeting is alerted. Rule number 2 is you need to have a clear and constantly updated organizational chart. Now, if you were like me in the very beginning of my business, we didn't even have enough employees to have an organizational chart. And even when we did have 20 or 30 employees, I thought that organizational charts were for big, boring companies that relied too much on bureaucracy. What I've learned now is that organizational charts are absolutely critical so people know what their responsibilities are, what their KPIs are that you are measuring their success by, and who reports to who. And so this is just a screenshot of one part of my organizational chart. This is our head of sales, Omar, and you can see that in the organizational chart, their KPIs is in this box right here. So his 2 KPIs is net new cash. So how much cash is the sales team bringing in, and cash per close. So of all the money that we made this last quarter divided by all of the units sold, what is our average cash per close? And then we have the responsibilities. So there's leading, managing, and holding people accountable, LMA. There's sales process optimization, booked to close ratio. So how many people that we're getting on the calendar are actually closing. That includes qualification, that includes show up rate, that includes follow up, et cetera, et cetera. Quality control is making sure that our salespeople and setters are representing our brand correctly. And capacity control means that we're never having to stop or slow down our marketing because we don't have enough sales reps. And so Omar, if anybody asked him at any points, which our clients have access to him, hey, what is your main responsibilities in the company? I guarantee you that he's going to talk about these things right here. And so because we know what he's doing and we know what KPIs he's looking at, anytime I feel like he's not doing his job, I have to reference these things here, either the actual tasks you should be doing or the KPIs you should be hitting, because we both agreed on this at the beginning of the quarter. Rule number 3 actually plays into rule number 2 in that you need some kind of CEO scorecard for your company. I see a lot of people have maybe their ad metrics down, maybe their sales metrics down, but they're kind of too granular. Also, they aren't up to date all the time. And also nobody's really referencing them because it's hard to get an overall picture. So what you want to do is create a CEO scorecard, which typically has anywhere from 6 to 12 numbers, where you're able to see as a CEO, the top level numbers that let you know which direction your company is heading in. And typically these are the same KPIs that you're going to put in your organizational chart, as well as the same KPIs that you use for your ROC and goal setting every single quarter. So for example, this is a screenshot of ours. You can see I'm looking at the number of new leads we have, number of qualified book calls that we get, our show up rate, taken calls, close rate, new cash, average cash per close, close, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a small screenshot of my dashboard. And so I'm looking at these on a daily basis. And if you've been following my content for a while, you'll know that I pretty much just use these numbers to run my entire business. So I like to tell people that I'm a free agent inside my company. I am totally removed from the company and the day-to-day operations. And so what I do is I open up this dashboard in the morning, I see what's low, what needs working on. Maybe it's the show up rate, maybe it's the qualified book calls, maybe it's the close rate. And then I work with that department leader to put a plan and systems in place to solve that problem. And so in that way, I'm a free agent. I just do whatever I see is the biggest constraint in the business and I work to solve it. But you have to have a dashboard in order to do that. Now, a lot of people will say, Ravi, I don't have all this fancy dashboards. I don't have a data analyst, et cetera, et cetera. Look, I worked with a client yesterday and all we did was identify what the top 10 numbers in his company was going to be because he wanted to hit $3 million in cash in Q1 of 2025. We wrote them all out, and then we figured out how a VA could find those numbers manually every single morning and post it in the general Slack channel. So don't think that you need to have this fancy dashboard to get things done. All you just need is the numbers, and you need them to be accurate, and you need people to be looking at them, which you could easily do with just posting them inside of a Slack channel. Rule number 4 is you want to cultivate culture in your company as much as possible, especially if you're a remote team. So you'll hear me talk about this a little bit later, but this is an example of one of the calls that we do at our company called Not a Call. It's called Not a Call because whenever I added it to the calendar, this was a few years ago, and we had so many calls that we had to do that somebody was just like, oh my God, not another call. And so it just stuck. It became Not Another Call. But this is different than most calls. So I took a screenshot here of just a small portion of our team. But what happens is we all get on this and we update everybody once a quarter, typically in the middle of the quarter, where we're at inside the department, where we're at inside the company, what's going well, what do we need to work on, and personal and professional wins. But we do it in a funny way. Every department, including me as a CEO, creates a presentation. We have an MC, and then we go through every single department and they do the presentation. And I am typically crying because I'm laughing so hard. And I'd say 80% of the jokes are directed at me as a CEO, and I love that, right? I've been roasted so many times in this meeting, it's not even funny. But also each department will roast each other or the departments will roast themselves. And so this is kind of a cool way that I can associate the team meeting up together and getting on a meeting with positive things. Because a lot of times, if we're all getting on a meeting together, people are like, oh my gosh, there's another meeting and we got to talk about all the problems. And instead, this is like, we're not even talking about problems here. All we're doing is celebrating wins and we're laughing. And this is a really critical part if you start building a larger and larger remote team, especially because you as the founder, you'll start to find yourself removed more and more from the organization. You'll start to have hires being made without you ever meeting this person or talking to these people. And so this gives you an opportunity to give some face time and make sure that people know what the culture of the company is about. Hey, really quickly, guys, if you like this video and you want my team's help to install some of these systems inside of your business, go down below and book a call to speak with me or my team today. Rule number 5 is one of those unsexy things about managing a team that most people don't want to talk about. Actually, I can't really find any other YouTube video that covers this in depth. And it's called a performance improvement plan, or a PIP for short. And what you do is you can use a performance improvement plan strategically in your company whenever you notice an employee who is having consistent declining performance. And performance could be like skills performance, like a low close rate, or cultural performance, like they're not matching your values. And it allows you to almost create like a formal notification like, hey, I see you doing this. We both agree that this should be fixed. Let's put an actual action plan in place with KPIs and deadlines in order for you to fix this, or we might have to offboard you from the company. And I actually don't think that people do this enough, myself included. I will tell you that in the past 2 quarters, we did 4 performance improvement plans, and every performance improvement plan ended with that person increasing their performance, where we only started the performance improvement plan because they were doing poorly for a month or 2 months prior to that. So I know that it works really well in getting somebody to kind of turn back around, because it's almost like a wake-up call, especially if you have people that have been in your organization for a few years. Sometimes they can start coasting a little bit. And so this lets them know that you're keeping an eye on them. And also they have to admit and agree with you that these are wrong in the first place. So you can't just give someone a performance improvement plan for something that, number one, you don't have an organizational chart, you don't have KPIs around. That's why some of those other things are important to get done first. Because if I went to my sales director and I said, hey, I'm putting on a performance improvement plan because you're not managing the sales calendar capacity, and I didn't have that inside the organizational chart, he'd be like, well, that's not really that fair. You've never told me that's important to begin with. So that's why you want to set that up first, and then you can come and create the performance improvement plan if somebody's not doing it, right? And so you need buy-in along the entire way. So when I create the organizational chart, I'll make sure that my sales director is agreed that that's part of his capacity. And then also every quarter we review it. Yes, that's part of it. So that whenever this comes out, then they can't be like, oh my God, this is out of nowhere. I can't believe it. It's like, oh no, we all agreed on this, and here's the data to back it up. So you guys can use this as a template. You see name, position, department, who the manager is, the date that the performance improvement plan is, the purpose, what the specific performance issues are, what the goals are, and then a very specific action plan with success criteria, deadlines, actions, and goals that you can then use in order to make sure that people either step up or quite frankly get let go. And that's totally fine as well. What's important is that you have a specific timeline, let's say 7 to 30 days, to turn this around before it really starts to become a problem and affect the rest of the company. Rule number 6 is having streamlined and systemized communication. This document right here is pulled directly from our onboarding docs whenever we onboard a new employee. And you can see that I literally go through what our communication tools are because I want to train our employees on how to communicate. This is also something that everyone's like, why would you care so much about how somebody communicates? Well, when you start having 10, 20, 30, 40 employees, people that are doing improper or ineffective communication, that stuff really starts building up, and you get what's known as operational drag inside of a company, where you wonder why it's taking you a week in order to get something done, or you ask this person to do this thing, it's 2 weeks later, you thought it was done, and then you find out it never got done, and that's because you're using iMessage to manage your entire company. So the first communication tool that we use is Slack, and I say this is the main communication tool for ad hoc instant communication internally. We should not be using Slack to manage projects and clients, but rather as a tool to get someone's quick input on something or bring to attention a very timely problem. Now, this is probably the exact opposite how a lot of you are using Slack. You're probably using Slack as a project management tool and to manage your clients. And I really strongly believe that's a really great way as you start scaling to have a lot of missed things happen. So we use Slack only just for instant communication. Then we have Asana, and this is our main communication tool for project and process-based work. And so this is where the majority of our communication should happen for things like managing clients, publishing content, handling technology requests, et cetera, et cetera. We want to use Asana when something is attached to a specific project or process so that we don't have to switch between Slack and Asana constantly. And then finally, email. I personally absolutely hate email. I haven't checked my email in over 4 years. And so I say email, this is the main communication tool for external communication. So we would never do an internal communication with one of our team members through email. Anybody that we're working with, contractors, employees, vendors, we're always going to try to pull them inside Slack so we can keep things way more organized, and we can also use the search feature in case we have to look up something in the future. Rule number 7 may be the most important in order to build a world-class team. This is how you're able to not only get a high-performing team, but one that absolutely loves what they do, that works on the weekends because they choose to, that works on Christmas because they choose to, that tells all of their friends and family, that wears your logo proudly everywhere they go. And that is to have in-person meetups, okay? Once again, I'm talking to all of you who have fully remote companies. It may feel weird. It may be strange. You've never met some of these people in person before, and what do they look like, et cetera, et cetera. But I will say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, after hosting over 6 company retreats, hosting dozens of in-person masterminds, and going to probably over 50 to 80 in-person masterminds, there is something about being in person with somebody, being able to talk to them, touch them, being able to sit around at nighttime in a fireplace and talk about their goals, what the future looks like, et cetera, that just absolutely will never be done over a remote session. And this is something that you can even combine with activities, like fun things like team building stuff, not cheesy team building stuff like you're holding a rope in a circle, but team building stuff like whitewater rafting, like I've done with my team in Colombia before. And so this one at the top is going to be a company retreat that we had. And then these are actually something I might even be the most proud of. And that is where I have either employees or contractors meeting up with other people on our team without me being involved. So these are people that have talked, they've chatted, they've met through my company, and then they've decided that, hey, I want to go visit you. I want to go stay with you. I want to go spend some time with you. And when I see that, I always ask them to share that photo with me and with our company, because to me, that's the most indicative sign that you have a great company. It's like having a group of friends when you introduce two friends together and then they end up becoming best friends as well. You're just like, wow, that couldn't make you any happier. And it's the same thing with a team. Now, look, if you're below $200,000 a year, then all you really need is an up-to-date organizational chart and some way to look at data so you can make the right decisions in your business and hold team members accountable. Don't go crazy with all the other stuff I talked about. Your main focus should be creating a marketing system that can attract high-ticket clients virtually on autopilot. And then as you start to build, you hire your first salesperson, your second salesperson, an appointment setter, a content producer, a video editor. All of a sudden, you're kind of going to blink and you're going to have 10 people below you and you have no real operational systems in place. That's when you can go back and do some of the other stuff that I talked about. But no matter where you're at in your business, whether it's $100,000 a year or $100 million a year, I highly recommend you go down below and book a call to speak with my team, where we can show you how we can help implement some of these systems and also client acquisition systems in order to help make this year your best year yet.